On the first question as to whether or not, Jeff, it is something they need to look at, as a separate statement versus in the context of the whole article, is maybe the whole ball game on the Johnny Depp side.
With regard to the first question, 100%. I think that question by the jury, you never know, why a jury, there could be one juror that wanted to know, so you don't really know what the consensus is. But yeah, definitely that question seems to favor Mr. Depp, because it seems like the jury's asking, do we have to prove that the whole thing is false, the whole article, or just that isolated statement about physical abuse? But like you said, the second question is still the general abuse allegation, with regard to whether that is true or false. That could be, and you just showed verbal abuse. I mean, that is clearly verbal abuse. So I don't think he's out of the woods on any of this, but certainly not on the second one, which is general abuse, not sexual violence.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I think that if nothing else, you get the sense that Johnny Depp is quite the writer. I don't know how much of that's driven by substances or just a creative imagination, but it had to be an interesting relationship on that level alone. Jeff Lax, when you're hearing these texts, and these were not the worst of the texts that were back and forth between these folks, what's your takeaway? Is this just a guy being annoyed, playful, evil? Where does it fall?
Michael, there's a show on TV that my wife and I are binging on together called Made. And it's about this woman who is made homeless by her husband, who basically throws her out of the house, doesn't touch her, but punches a wall near her. Very similar to what Johnny Depp does. She ends up at an abuse facility and she says, I'm not abused. And the worker there says to her, he punched a wall right next to your face, right? He was screaming at you the whole time, right? And she said the next time it may not be just words. This is physical violence that tends to lead to, verbal violence, and physical object violence tends to lead to violence against the women in many cases. And so that kind of abuse, the verbal abuse, has to be taken very seriously. And I think the jury will, based on their question, you see they're separating it. And I think they are taking it seriously. And so I don't think, a lot of people think this has gone well for Johnny Depp. I always thought this part of it was a real problem for him because you hear him being abusive.
And Jeff, about 30 seconds. What do you think is the biggest issue for this jury to wrestle with? Is it really just as simple as, I believe her, I believe him?
I think the hardest part is damages, because they may find technically that there was defamation, but he doesn't deserve anything. So it wouldn't shock me if he actually wins the lawsuit and gets $1. That would not shock me. So I think what damages really are there, because he's not a likable character here. And I don't think he has real damages. And
that may be just fine with Johnny Depp, because he has said more than once from the stand that he's there doing this to just tell his story. Understood to happen. Obviously, no foundation for that. But I think I got kind of two questions brewing here. One is this back and forth with the attorneys that made it look like neither of them were quite sure what they were trying to get out of this witness or prevent. And then the witness's testimony in itself as it relates to what he did not see.
That's what happens when you have a witness with a personality. Sometimes they go off on a little bit of a tangent, and both sides get an answer that they were not expecting. Certainly, even Depp's team wasn't expecting that response, and certainly Heard's team was not expecting it, but that's what happens. The judge sustained the objection, which was, I think, proper. It was a little bit confusing for a moment there, but it was proper because he's there as a fact witness. He's there to answer one question. Did he see evidence of abuse? And I think in the end, he clarified no.
Yeah, and I think we've talked a little bit about, last week about this whole concept of presumed damages, because defamation per se, which is really an allegation of some criminal conduct, in this case physical abuse of someone, triggers presumed damages. And there is a specific jury instruction that they got that says you don't have to see the actual damages. They're presumed. But Jeff Lax, there's a follow-up instruction that basically says here's how you calculate actual damages. Seems to me a little conflicting and maybe confusing, and I don't know, maybe reversible if they don't quite get it right.
It's very interesting. I think in that scene that you just played, testimony with the attorney, you see that the money is very important to Amber Heard. She doesn't just want to win. She can't afford to lose. And that's why her lawyers are going after, do you have damages? That's why it's such a big deal to their side, because even if that testimony, that back and forth was, even if you win, Mr. Depp, how have you been harmed? And that goes to your question about actual damages. Where are your actual damages? Because everybody understands if you're falsely accused of sexual assault, I mean, what could be worse than that to somebody's reputation? Everyone understands why that's defamation per se, as you alluded to. However, you see that the Heard side, to them, the money matters a lot because she simply can't afford to pay even if she loses. I think that's a good job by her lawyer setting up, even if our client loses, look, there were no actual damages.
Yeah, that is very interesting because